Hello everyone, welcome back. We're going to talk about the blues again today, and we're going to be looking at the progression of how chords changed in a jazz blues coming from a blues, like a blues style blues progression. We're going to start with the traditional blues progression, go through how chords are added in jazz, blues, and then end with the bird blues, which can sound drastically different and totally unrelated, but they are actually connected very much so, and have tonal centers in the same place and everything for the most part. So the first thing is a traditional blues. I'm not going to play it in a traditional blues style because I want you to see the chords in common between these. So I'm not going to be doing like... the progression is going to be the same, but I'm just going to be using shell voicings for all of this so that you can see the ones that are shared between different versions that we do. So for the first one, we have 1, 1, 1, 4, 1, 5, 4, 1, 5, back to 1 at the end. So the progression all the way through is just 1, 1, 1, 1, 4, 4, 1, 1, 5, 4, 1, 5. So the first difference that we're going to be seeing in the next version, and this is where we start talking about a jazz blues, is that the 5 chord is replaced by a 2-5. And this is, if we look back in terms of like the history of jazz harmony, this is what we start seeing when we think of early jazz music, is that the 5 chord to 1 chord cadence is being replaced by 2-5-1. So this sound that we're all used to is, instead of 1 2 3 4 1 2 3 4, is 1 2 3 4 1 2 3 4. So that's what we're going to do in the blues. Where the 5 chord and the 4 chord are in bars 9 and 10 are now going to be 2-5 instead of playing 5 and then 4. In the very last bar, instead of just playing the 5 chord, we're going to play the 2 and then the 5 chord. So let's do that. So we're going to have 1. Oh, I'm going to change one other thing. In bar 2, I'm going to play the 4 chord. This is done in traditional blues as well. So this is not unique to jazz. But I figured as we add changes, this will be another addition to put in there. So we have 1, 4, just shell voicings, 1, 1, 4, 4 again, 1, 1, and now we have 2, 5, 1, 2, 5, 1, and the top. So the 5 in the very last measure was, the measure was split in half, and we had 2 and then 5, and then in bars 9 and 10, we put in a 2 and a 5 to set up the cadence to the 1 chord. So that's the first difference, and we'll see that in it's a very simple way to make a song sound more like jazz in terms of harmony by putting a 2 and a 5 in instead of just the 5 for the cadence. Now the next version is going to be adding turnarounds and setting up harmony changes with other cadences. So let me walk through first what we're going to be doing with it. The first 3 bars are going to be the same. 1, 4, and 1 are still the same. The 1, the 4, and the 5 chords are still all dominant 7th. But then in the 4th bar, the bar before we change to the 4 chord, we're going to be playing a 2-5 of the 4 chord. So let's do that. So we have 1, 4, 1, and then 2 C minor, F7, B flat 7. So the C minor is the 2 of the 4 chord, F7 is the 5 of the 4 chord, and then we have the 4 chord. So what that's doing is setting us up to hear the harmony coming before the next measure and creating a little cadence to lead us to the 4 chord. So if we have... Now the next part is we're going to have a turnaround to 2, 3 and 6, and then the 2 chord, 5, and 3, 6, 2, and 5, and 1. So all together, I know I did some other stuff, so let me go back for a second. So we have the 1 chord still the same, 4 chord, 1 chord, 2 of 4, 5 of 4, 4 chord. Then we're going to play sharp 4 diminished, which leads us to 1, turnaround to 2, and we did this turnaround to 2 in a previous video. So look back if you don't know that one. But it leads us back to 3, and then 6, and then 2, 5, 3, 6, 2, 5, 1. So now we've added turnarounds to set up harmony changes, making it even more like, sounding like jazz. So this is a good point to or a good time to also make the point that if you know blues and if you know rhythm changes, you're going to be able to play a lot of jazz. And that's because what we just saw here with this 3-6-2-5 and setting up the 4 chord is exactly what happens in rhythm changes. So and this is just applying it to a blues, but really if you know what's going on in a blues and if you know what's going on in the rhythm changes, you can play them in 12 keys and you're really comfortable with them, then jazz, learning new songs is going to be a lot easier for you. So highly recommended. So let's get to the bird blues now. I think I'm going to play a chorus first of just chords and just use shell voicing still, just so that we're seeing common chords here. And then we'll talk slow, we'll talk at a leisurely pace about what's happening, because there's still some things in common, but there's some new things too. So we have, starting with the 1 chord, 1, 2, 3, 4. So let's go through that. At the very beginning of the song, we have 1 measure with 1 chord, and then we have a number of measures with 2 chords per measure. So we have the 1 chord first, F major 7. This is now a major 7th chord, and the 4 chord, when we get to it, is major 7th as well. This is because we're using a lot more functional diatonic harmony. In a traditional blues, part of that blues sound is that the 1 chord is a dominant 7th chord. The dominant 7th in traditional harmony is supposed to be the 5 chord, and it's supposed to lead you to another chord. So in a blues, the fact that the 1 chord and the 4 chord as well are both dominant gives us that kind of blues sound. And in traditional harmony, the 1 chord and the 4 chord are, supposed to be major 7th. So because we're dealing with a lot more like functional diatonic harmony, I don't know if this was a conscious decision or not, but the 1 chord and the 4 chord are major 7th now. So we have 1 major 7th, and then immediately we have a 2-5-1 to the 6 chord. And this is something we've dealt with before, talking about our standard chord progressions to anticipate changes in songs that we don't know. The 1 chord going to the relative minor with the 6 chord is something that we've seen in a lot of other songs. So we're starting out 1, 2 of 6, 5 of 6, and then the 6 chord. Now, the next part we're leading to, forget it for a second that we're playing this version. Let's go back to the previous version. In bar 4, there was a 2 of 4 and a 5 of 4 to lead us to the 4 chord, right? We had C minor 7, F7, and then B flat. It was actually dominant in that case, but in this, it's major. So we still have the 2 and 5 leading us to the 4 chord, the 2 of 4 and the 5 of 4. But instead, before the 2 chord, we're going to have the 5 of that 2 chord, which is G7. So let's go from the D minor 7. This would be in bar 3, the relative minor. We're going to go to G7, which is the 5 of C minor, which is the 2 of the 4 chord. This is like a mouthful at this point. But once you get it, you don't have to think of this while you're playing. The explanation is good to know, but these are all just common progressions, really. So we had 6, the 6 chord, and then the 5 of the next chord, which is C minor, 5 of 4, and then the 4 chord. Now at this point, we're kind of going to go in autopilot once you know it, because we already know the trick that the 4 chord can go into a minor 4, and that's going to lead us back to the 1, or by extension to the 3, because 1 and 3 are similar. This is again from a previous video, so I'm not going to get in depth about that. But the 1 chord and the 3 chord are interchangeable because they function in the same way as a resolution. So the 4 chord is going to go to 4 minor 7, and then that acts like a 2, and then we play its 5 chord, which is E flat 7, and now we just play chromatic 2 5s going back. That leads us to the 3, like we could expect, because that's supposed to lead us back to a 1 or a 3. And then we play 6, there's a tritone substitution, which is A flat minor 7, and then D flat 7, and then we have the 2 chord, and it's the same as the other version of the blues that we just played last time. 3, 6, 2, 5, sorry, and then 1. So let me do that all together, and then I think that covers the bird blues. So if we have 1, 2, 3, 4. Tritone substitutions that time. Tritone substitution again. So, and those are not decisions I'm making ahead of time, and I don't think most jazz musicians are when you're using tritone substitutions. That's also in a previous video about tritone substitutions. So, if we think really quickly just about where the chords are in this one, we have the 1 chord in the first measure for the bird blues. The 4 chord is in measure 5. Same as the traditional blues. No different. The 2 chord is in measure 10, right? 10, 11, 12, yeah. And then the 5 chord. And like we said, that's just replacing the 5 chord from the traditional blues. So that is set up in the same place as well. And then if we go to the 3 chord next for the beginning of the turnaround, the 3 is just substituting the 1 chord. Like I briefly mentioned a second ago, but it's in a previous video as well. So that's it. I was thinking of combining this with talking about how to solo over each one of these blues as well. Although the previous video that I just did yesterday does cover how to solo over a jazz blues in some ways. I wanted to get more in depth about it, and also specifically how to do it over a bird blues, because there are more chord changes to deal with, and there are some tricks that we can use. But I want to keep it just with this today for just those those forms of the blues, kind of taking us through harmonically from a traditional blues up to a bird blues. I think I forgot to mention, it's called a bird blues because Charlie Parker popularized this, and his nickname was Bird, so we refer to that as a bird blues now. If you're looking for an example of that song, Blues for Alice is one that I think a lot of people like to choose first. What's that song called? Freight Train is a really good one. It's on the Kenny Burrell and John Coltrane album. It's not as common, but it's a really cool tune. And it's in, what is it? It's in E flat. So again, 12 keys, learn it all in 12 keys. That was just a quick one, bird blues in E flat. But that's a really cool tune, so check that out. But there's lots of them, you'll hear them around. So I hope you enjoyed this, hope it was useful. If you have any questions, as always, let me know. If you enjoy this content, please subscribe, and I'll see you next time. Have a good day or evening wherever you are. Bye-bye.